Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Good, Frank. Good to see you.
Same here, man.
Welcome to another episode of Perspective Shift. Thanks for
Yes.
joining us on another broadcast.
Yeah, it's great to join us, man.
No, yeah. I had a good last week or so. How about yourself?
It's always good. You know, if it's lousy, I choose to look at it that way,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm choosing not to.
That's the point of this show, right?
It is. It's actually because we're talking about that. It's about not excluding anything. In other words, it's not about trying to get rid of anger. It's just moving towards joy.
Well, I just think it's funny. A lot of people, when they get into the spiritual side of things or consciousness, the subconscious mind, they think, or at least I did, going into it, oh, I'm never going to have any more problems. I'm not going to have any more obstacles. This will finally give me that relief that I'm looking for.
Yeah, and it's almost like you'll never have an obstacle or problem again and not know why.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what's so funny is we're
Yeah.
not saying the problems or the obstacles disappear. By no means.
They can't.
It's how you move through them.
Yeah, or around them or away from them. However you want to perceive it.
That's the thing. You start to look at the problem or the obstacle in such a different light, where you see that it's a mind-created illusion.
It is. And there's different ways of looking at it. You got problems and solutions, or good and bad. And then you have preference and non-preference. And there's even levels above preference and non-preference. But right now, in the physical world, we're moving in towards that preference, non-preferential. In the physical duality world, we're stepping out. This program is about stepping out of good and bad and going from preference to non-preference. Because
we need to say the Shakespeare quote. Do you remember that one?
what was the Shakespeare quote we would have to say again?
Oh, well, no, sorry. Just wanted to dive in real quick.
William Shakespeare.
No, he nailed it with this. There's no such thing as good or bad. It's just what the mind perceives it.
Yeah.
I think I butchered that, but it's however the mind wants to see it, essentially.
William
there's no such
William
thing.
won't mind that you butchered it.
No, William and I go way back.
He go way back.
What I'm talking when I'm sitting with like
Go way
Siddhartha.
Were you in Hamlet or the other?
With Buddha, Jesus.
Yeah.
A lot of guys don't know Jesus. He's
Yeah.
one of those unknown guys.
Yeah, who is that guy?
Yeah,
He's
a lot of
from
people have never heard of him.
Nazareth somewhere, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, so when you're actually in the place of preference and non-preference, you actually choose a preference, but you don't worry about the non-preference. But when it's good and bad, a lot of people in the field are trying to get rid of bad. So they think, if I can get rid of this thing, I can focus on the good. And I'm like, no, when you move into the other field of preference, you'll only move towards your preference. And the non-preference will actually show you what you prefer.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of what we're trying to do is show people that good and bad is a conditioned pattern of thinking. That's a dualistic
Or it's
way
a misunderstanding of how life is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We assign good or bad.
Yeah.
And when you see that, when you can look at the mind and and see that we are assigning meanings based on subconscious previous experiences,
Yeah.
and then saying that's how it is.
Or this is how it ought to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it is. It's like if everything, you look at the natural body temperature of human, it's like anywhere from 97.6 upward of lower, whatever. So we look across the board, everyone falls into that place. So there is an understanding of warm and cold based on the baseline of where you are. So if you go into 100 degrees, it's, obviously it starts going over the body temperature, and the body has to work to try to cool it down, so there could be slight discomfort in that. The same thing in the other way. But some people might prefer to be in colder climates. Some people might prefer to be in warmer climate. But it's a preference. One isn't better or worse. It just is. If I prefer to be in warmer climate, colder climate has to exist in order for me to have the experience of warmer climate. Because if everything was in the field of warm, we wouldn't know what that is to actually experience it. And the physical world of duality, which we came here to experience, a lot of people are trying to break free of this place. I'm like, yeah, it's called death. In what we call death of the corporeal being. But you came here to play in the game. But what we're trying to point out is the laws of understanding. You actually then enjoy the game. It's just a game. You don't need to play it. But when you actually understand it's just a game, you understand the laws and why we're here to do it. Again, the why is subjective.
And I like how you said that. So when we say you see the game for what it is, what we mean is you realize there cannot be good without bad, quote unquote. There cannot be preferential without non-preferential.
Yeah.
This is
Could
the
it be
yin, the
yeah.
yang. This
Yeah.
is what this is life.
Yeah.
Without having that contrast, we could never have experience. And that's all we're here for.
Yeah,
This body is to see, taste, touch, smell, hear.
Yeah, and
That's it.
You can't be focused without distraction.
Well, it's the mind that assigns the meaning to the taste, touch, smell, hear, and says, you like this, you don't like this. It's this way, it's that way. These people are this way, that way. You know what I mean?
And what it is because the experience of like moving from preference to non-preference, the shift is the true entity of what we call success, not necessarily the thing that we prefer. And what I mean, let's go a little deeper in the meaning of this. When we focus on the outside world, it's always going to reflect to us in a backwards and upside down way. In other words, if we live in a sphere, which we do, and everything is round, so if anyone's ever done this before, if you took a nice silver spoon, nice shiny spoon, and you looked at it because it's concaved, it's rounded, it's not flat like a mirror. So if you look at a flat mirror, it will reverse everything. In other words, if I raise my right hand, according to reflection in the mirror, it looks like someone's looking at me with their left hand up. But when you look in a spoon that's concave, and the physical world in which we live in is concave, it's round, so therefore the atmosphere around it is, it's not only backwards, it's also upside down. So if you're it's like trying to read a book upside down and backwards and trying to get the gist of it. No, you can't. You have to go inward. So the world will always reflect to us everything that's backwards and upside down. That's why you cannot rely on the outside world in its dictation. You must go inward and create the outside world or perceive it, and then shift and change it from there. So a lot of times we prefer something. We think, oh, I prefer this. This is happiness. I'm like, this isn't happiness. You happen to be happy and chose the sandwich that happened to be a meatball sandwich rather than the bologna. So you say, I prefer it. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but it had nothing to do with it. You happened to be in the mood and something led you to the meatball sandwich rather than the bologna sandwich. And I'm not here to pretend I know why. I believe at the end of the game, just like an actor at the end of the movie, when they're done acting, they go to the premiere with the other actors and everyone, and they see the full fruition, edited version, music and everything in it, and then they're like, wow. Because prior to that, they didn't see the full picture of it. You know, actors may come into a movie and only be, a couple of scenes in it. Even the lead actor isn't always on the set because they got to shoot scenes without the lead actor in it. They may be on the set, but they're sitting on the side. But even they don't know until they sit at the premiere because it hasn't gone through editing, the music hasn't been lifted into it, and all these things. All of a sudden, they're watching it. And at that moment, they understand the movie, that particular movie, not every movie that ever exists or will exist. So if that's the case, while you're acting, stop trying to know what the movie's about and play your role. And what do I mean by that? Be present. When you're present, you'll know everything it is you need to know in that moment, and that's all you'll ever need to know. You don't need to know everything.
It's funny, we focus so much on the details. And
that's where the devil is.
It's just it's just
sneaks
so
up
funny.
on you.
It's so funny because we'll say, "This is my dream," and then we think of every little thing involved with that dream, and that's where we lose the attention and the focus, which is just how did that feel? And if we can remain on how did that feel, that's how we bring things to us so much quicker in this. The way we perceive time in this plane.
Well, why is it quicker?
Well, you know what I mean.
No, think about this. This is an interesting point.
It's how we perceive that.
It is.
It's all.
It is, because think
Now.
about a kid. Well, quicker means you're enjoying the time in which you're in the moment. So think about a child or your childhood, and this is like I'm still playing in this game and I'm still getting used to it. But whenever I say those people or most people, I really can't say that, because everything I'm talking about can only come from my perspective and concept of my experience. Even if I got to gather around 1 million people and talk to them, it's still my conception of them. So I don't know most people. I only know my perception and concept of those people. So, and it's usually a outward projection of me. So therefore, my experience of understanding as I do at this moment in time now, which by next Wednesday will change slightly, but moving in direction, or greatly, we don't know. But when we look back on these other moments in time, we realize they were just that moment and flash in perspective. But when I was a child and nothing was pulling out because I didn't know I had deadlines and things to meet, and I was at the playground, and next thing you know, the streetlights went on. But yet, someone's like, hey, you were out in that playground for 8 hours. I didn't know what 8 hours meant. That's the quickness in which we're talking about. We're not trying the quickness in the anxious anxiety. Let's get there quicker. Speed, race, there. We're going to be late. No, when you're present, time flees. Now, there's somebody always recording time in this duality in which we call life right now. So we have a concept of time in the field of measurement. But when I'm in that, I don't want that measurement to come quicker. If I'm really eating a great meal, I don't want to move through it quicker just to get to dessert. But yet, what's interesting, it goes quickly because I was present with that meal. And that's the brilliant. That's how we know time is something we made up from just the standpoint of measurement. That's it. And there's nothing wrong with that in the physical world. It's got its reasons. I'm not saying do away with it. But we're talking about when we could stay present, and in the present moment, you'll know everything it is you need to know in that moment. And that's all you'll ever need to know in that moment. But then when you start like, what's this all about? I'm like, well, do you know what it's all about? No. Well, then you don't need to know that. It's like trying to figure out the movie halfway through the movie. What's this movie about? I'm like, it's almost like you watch a movie with someone, like, what just happened? I'm like, we don't know what just happened. Continue watching it. You'll know why that character did that. If the director or the storyteller wanted us to know why the character did that now, we would know. So relax. Enjoy the movie. At some point, you will know.
It's funny because that's what we do.
Yeah.
That like all
and we
day
ruin
long.
the movie.
Yeah. We're all trying to ruin the movie.
Yeah. It's like I was telling you earlier. I remember watching.
We're all trying to ruin the movie.
Remember when that movie Sixth Sense, we were talking about this earlier, came out?
It's got to end this way, otherwise it's going to be horrible.
Yeah, and I remember watching this movie, not knowing anything about the director who wrote the movie and stuff like that. And you watched it, and it had people that I recognized, like Bruce Willis, and I'm like, so I'm just like most movies I go to watch, I don't anticipate. I'm sitting there watching it, and then when the end hit, and you realize, dude, he was a ghost, and you're like, wow, and like I told Mike, I started laughing out loud because I was like, holy cow, I did not see that coming. But the funny thing about that is now when I went to go see another movie by what's the director's name?
Shyamalan
Night.
Yeah. M. Shyamalan.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I don't want to mess it up and be disrespectful to him, but he's a brilliant storyteller. So then I went to see, I think it was Broken or Unbroken.
Yeah, I think it's Broken.
Yeah, Broken.
With Bruce Willis.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking
it's
about.
Unbroken. Because
Yeah.
Bruce Willis played a character that
Unbreakable.
Unbreakable or something like that.
Yeah.
So you get the gist of it. So now I come to watch this. I'm in the theater watching this. I'm like, okay, this guy's very clever. So I'm going to pay attention and try to anticipate any shift and change so I'm not going to miss out. Well, at the end of the movie, I laughed because I missed the whole movie.
You were too busy looking for
I was waiting for something like Sixth Sense to happen, and nothing like that did. And I laughed because I missed the movie. Because when I watched Sixth Sense, I was present. In this movie, I was anticipating, and I missed the movie, so I had to laugh.
Guys,
because-
that's like the best analogy for what we're experiencing in life.
Yeah.
You know, we're
I know
so
it's coming.
holding on to something.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, I got to get this job in order to do this. Oh, if I don't do this, I'll never get this. I got to find the right lover. I've got to find the right husband, wife, you name
If I
it.
just had this, it'd be great. I'm like, no.
That's what we do throughout our lives. And when you can see it like so easily and simple like that.
And there's a reason why people always like. So I hear people talk about this early on in life, and I'm like, okay, I got the concept, but why do we do that? And this is why we do it. It's because when we are in this present moment, and when we're in the present moment, you naturally fall into a harmonious place of peace, joy, and love. It is our natural state. When you get distracted, you fall out of it. And what I mean, when you attach yourself to the outside world. So we're in the present moment. You naturally become comfortable. Joy comes over you. Excitement will start from that place. And then energy, propulsion will move towards that place. So when you do it, the recording or the outward expression of it becomes the physical world. So for a kid, it'd be like they get it, they fell into that place of the present moment. And then they wandered into the park and they got on the swing. And then because it was recorded, they think, oh my God, the park with the swing is why I'm happy. And it's like, no. The swing, you swinging on swing was a mere expression of your happiness in the physical world. It wasn't the causation. It was the fulfillment of the joy. It was the extension of the joy. And this is why we get hung up on it. The outside world is the expression, the fulfillment of it, but it isn't the causation. It's in here.
What Frank's talking about right now is huge. This assignment that the mind does is how we navigate what we call reality. So every moment and experience we're having, our subconscious and mind is assigning a meaning to something.
Again, it's a reflection that's backwards and upside down.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
how, if we can see, oh, I am assigning a meaning to this, you can then separate yourself and be aware of what the operating system is doing. And that allows that space where you're no longer the feeling. So you see, oh, I recognize and see this is making me angry. Why would something like this make me angry? Anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yeah.
Loosens it up.
Yeah.
Not as angry anymore because you realize,
Yeah, and
I'm hurting myself by being angry.
Yeah, and the solution that we're trying to come up with, and there's a multitudes of ways of doing this, but is to simply close your eyes and go inward. And I remember when I was a kid, and I go to the carnival, and I remember going into the House of Mirrors, and I remember this guy said the secret to going into a House of Mirrors is close your eyes and place your hand on the wall, and you can get through it quickly. But when you keep your eyes open, the outward reflection will drive your mind crazy, because you don't even know if you're looking at you or a real reflection or another reflection of you. But once you close your eyes, you can sense the wall, and you can make it out of there. So whenever you're actually getting hung up in the world, close your eyes, metaphorically and in the reality of close your eyes, and all of a sudden those multitudes of mirrors, the reflections go away, and now you know. Because once I close my eyes, I know this is my right hand, I know this is my left hand, there is no reflection telling me otherwise, and then I could simply make it out. But when I'm looking at the mirrors, the illusion of the multitudes of mirrors, like, is that a reflection of my actual self, or is that a reflection of another mirror reflection, and there I am? Once I close my eyes, that doesn't exist. I'm no longer lost in the world.
Man, the world is just a house of mirrors.
That's exactly what it is.
But truly, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, that's a great analogy.
This is where the fractal geometry comes from. The physical world presents fractal geometry. It presents continuous patterns of the one. And where is the one pattern? Close your eyes and you'll find it. But I'm not saying walk through the world with your eyes closed, but spend a moment or two in your day and close your eyes so you realize. Because you can make it through the house of mirrors with your eyes open when you become better at this. But when you really get lost, close your eyes, put your hand on the mirror, and you make your way out. Someone told me that. And I'm like, oh, I did. But with my eyes open, I got like dizzy, and you can get hysterical. It's like, oh my God. But, you know, it's a very interesting thing. The whole world approaches that way. So, what symbolizes close my eyes? The present moment. The present moment has no outward reflection. It just is. And then once I'm doing that, then from that place, I can express outward. But I'm going from here outward, not outward in. So there's no side effect from the outside world. I'm projecting out and I'm creating. What I'm creating is my perception of it, because there's a multitude of other artists adding their little stroke of paint on it. Musicians in a band, different musicians, different bands will start this way. Maybe they'll be like sitting around and like, hey, they'll tell the drummer, hey, give me a beat, give us a beat, boom, boom. All of a sudden, the guitarist's like, okay, boom, and then the bass player kicks in, and then all of a sudden the vocalist, the singer starts coming up with lyrics, or they might next time say, hey, Jimmy, start singing, and he comes up with words, and the guitar plays and the drum. Doesn't matter, but something started from nothing, and then everything. So it was a stroke. And then the guitar player did their stroke, and the bass player did their stroke. And see how it's like, but the guitar player isn't controlling the song. They're involved in controlling their stroke. But the drummer, the bass player, everything. And then all of a sudden it becomes one painting, or in this case, one piece of music that has overlays of stroke. And all of a sudden, these 4 or 5 members of the band collaborated individually with different paintbrushes, but it was one painting and one song.
See, the one painting, one song, that's what Frank's describing when he's going back and saying, like a moment ago, when he said this conceptual idea, like when I say most people, well, most people is my mind-created reality we live in.
How many personas have you had since you remember your personas?
I'm a mother. I'm a brother. I'm a this. I'm a that. You know.
Yeah, I was a kid in first grade. I was a kid in second grade.
Yeah.
I was a kid that got in a fight on the
I was
playground.
a high schooler. I was this. I was that.
Yeah, and there's a multitude. Right now I'm a podcaster. At least I think I
am. But it's just it's so funny because like the big secret, the trick, you're it all, and you have to relax in the being of that.
That's it.
And no, not only are you already there's no place to go, there's nothing to be had. You have it all.
Yep.
This is simply an uncovering of it.
Yep.
It is, and so this journey you're on, there's nowhere to journey to.
No.
This path you're seeking, there's nothing to seek.
It's like a simulation, like we talked about, I think, in last week's transmission, about that ride I got on at Disney World, where you're sitting, and like, there was hydraulics, so it's moving. You're in this box, essentially, and it's moving up and down and shaking a little bit. But when you're looking at the screen, the mind thinks you're racing through the galaxy, because I think it was a Star Wars type of theme thing. So it feels like you're moving through the galaxy at like 1,000 miles an hour, but this box isn't moving in relationship to the land it's sitting on in Florida or California, whichever Disneyland or Disney World you're in. But relative to the parcel of land it's sitting on, it hasn't moved other than shaking around up and down. But yet the mind thinks you just moved at 1,000 miles an hour and you're like strapped back in your seat.
And that's what we're calling life, this little ride.
Yeah.
And reality, I should say.
Yeah.
It's our vibration, it's our feeling, it's our frequency.
Yeah.
Creating what we're calling experience, what we're calling reality, life.
And that's what exhilaration is. Exhilaration is wanting to get there in a moment of excitement, and you're trying to catch up to it. But once you catch up to it, like when I get onto the freeway with my car and I gun it, the RPMs go up to about 5 grand. And then once I get to the speed in which I tap out, they drop down below 2,000. But the car doesn't slow down. So what is excitement or exhilaration? It's moving towards something exciting, but once you become one with it, you're then in the mode of joy. So exhilaration is not something you want to be doing constantly, because that's how you burn your engine out. Anxiety is the same thing. You're just moving away from it. You're moving towards a non-preferential. So the same energy of exhilaration is the same energy of anxiety, is because you're moving towards what you feel like you're moving towards, something that you don't want to experience. Or at least you think you don't want to experience. So that creates anxiety. This shouldn't be happening.
It's also important to remember that you're this energy source, right? So with this constant focus on something you would say you don't want, and you've got that in your mind, what you're doing in fact is keeping this tension applied on something that you don't want, which is actually bringing it quicker and more to you than ever. So anything that you're trying, so how I look at this is I always try to say to myself, I need to be okay no matter what way. And what I mean by that is I'm okay with any outcome. The reason I'm okay with any outcome for any given situation is it's an experience that I know is coming from a thought pattern or from an emotion, from a feeling that I've created. So when I'm applying, like I like to say, an energy or a pressure in a certain direction, that's me pushing away or against the natural free flow of energy. So when you can allow the free flow of energy without application of tension, it's a much smoother and enjoyable ride.
Because
you think you want something, and then you think you don't want something, so you're always pushing in one way or the other rather than allowing it to flow.
Because we think we know.
Yeah.
So it's like, think about this. If you were reading a book that you knew, why you're reading it? Now, you might read a book the second time to look for something, so you have to allow that as well. So as you're reading a book, you're not really anticipating what ought to be said, because if you do, you're not reading anything new. So why are you doing that in life? Why are you trying to anticipate what ought to happen? And this is where the anxiety comes from. And you're like, this shouldn't be happening. I'm like, says who? I'm like, we're here for the experience that was laid out in front of us. There is no memory of it. But you're trying to bring the past into the present moment or project it into the future and wonder why your life is disarrayed. It's like going onto a movie set as an actor and you're bringing the movie that you already finished up onto this set, and the director's like, whoa, what are you doing? I'm acting. I'm like, yeah, that movie you did is done. We're in the present movie set now. Listen to my cue, stay present, and I will guide you. But this is what I know. And all of a sudden the actor starts going, what's my motivation? It's like, whoa, hey, listen, Marlon. We're in a different role here.
What Frank just described is how religion kind of came to be. We gave a meaning to this intuition, and it happened to say, this God, which we turned into a male form, and all of this. It's a way to describe this feeling. That's where religion comes from. And so this feeling that we're talking about, this intuition, this higher power, it exists, and it's been so many people have tried to label this in so many different ways. And yes, certain people can connect with it and find with it, and that's why these things are great. Frank and I at the core are trying to share that we're all talking about the same thing.
Yeah. And that's what, so that even as we go deeper into it, looking at religious foundations, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that either.
No.
Because it got us to this place. And when I say got us to this place, it doesn't mean it's to be discarded. It's just that we look at it differently. Because we don't know enough to know if it was wrong. Like a lot of people like to sit in this moment right now and then review history and say, this is where we went wrong. And I'm like, how do you know they went wrong? It's like the guys talking about the football game that was played on Sunday on Monday and said, Jim, the quarterback should have done this. I'm like, says who? Because if the quarterback did everything perfect, we wouldn't be here on Monday talking about it. We'd have nothing to talk about. Well, we're about to have a show, but everything was done perfect, so we have nothing to talk about. We actually have even me and Mike are talking. We were talking about this earlier. Mike's like, I want to get to we were talking about how do we get to a place where we fully explain. I'm like, we never want to get there. Because then the podcast thing will be over. Like, I don't want to hear the greatest song ever played in human history now, because then there's going to be nothing left to look forward to. And I say that in somewhat of a joking manner, because that will never exist. Some people are like, yeah, it's freaking Stairway to Heaven and Pass Back in this. I'm like, yeah, that was a great song. But, again, when you let go and stop comparing, there's been many great songs, but we're trying to hold on to a place in time in history. Maybe you had a memory of that time when you heard that song and it imprinted into your life. But I don't want to say it's a sad life, but it's kind of like a life that would peter out if you're still living, as Bruce Springsteen said it, in your glory days, thinking that this present moment and future moving doesn't exist as glorified. It's just downhill. And that's not true. It can be played out that way. You can experience that way, and people have. And for what reason? Was it good or bad? I don't know. But as things shift and stuff, I'm like, glory days are not something I'm looking for. I can go back and look at a glory day and say there are more glory days to have. So when someone asks me now, like years ago, I was like, what was your best time? And I would think about it. Oh, it was the time of, this time. And now people ask me like, what was the best time of your life? I'm like, now. Because I don't know. This is all I know is now. I really don't know the past because I'm experiencing the past now.
I think it's so funny how we make so many plans for the future.
And
I'm saving money for this.
It's never come.
Oh, I'm going to buy life insurance
of
this.
There's a concept of the future, but there's no such thing as the future. I can give you a day of the week. So today happens to be Wednesday. So I could tell you the concept of Thursday. And then there'll be a concept at some point what we call tomorrow is Thursday. But if I say future, I say tomorrow or yesterday, they never exist. And they don't. Because if I tell you, hey, tomorrow, I'll give you $1 million. And then, 24 hours in which we call 24 hours, you come to me, hey, I want that $1 million. I'm like, oh, I'll give it to you tomorrow.
We just think in limited terms of like when we assign meaning to the future, or we think in scarcity because we say, I must do this so I have this later on.
But there is no future. And I mean this truly, but there's this present moment. Within this present moment, there's infinite perspectives of this present moment.
And possibilities. So
I can memorize and talk about these different stories, but whenever I'm telling the story, I'm doing it now. But what is the future? In the future, you'll get $1 million. When do I get it? I'm like, in the future. The future will never come. Tomorrow will never come. Right? Because what you think is tomorrow, it's like, hey, I want that $1 million. I'm like, well, I'll give it to you tomorrow.
and the reason we bring this up, guys, is this is how we chase our dreams. In a year from now, I'll quit my job.
There's nothing
exactly.
To chase. You already are the dream.
I'll obtain this in this amount of time, or when I get this is when I'll be happy. And what Frank and I are saying is that doesn't exist.
Well, do that, because that will show it doesn't exist. So by all means, do that.
I hope you don't have to do that.
Well, we like,
it's a lot of suffering.
Yeah, you don't have to do it. You actually don't. But I know the perspective of the way I grew up. I did that.
Me too.
To get to this place. So at some level, I'm not telling people to go through it, but I would never want to take it away from someone, because when I was chasing my dream, and one day I just sat on a stump, in the middle of the woods, and realized I'm already in the dream, I laughed again because the chasing it led me to not chase it. So there is, in the duality world, there is a form of striving to learn not to strive. Like the Buddhist teacher will say, go forth and have no desire. And the pupil goes off and comes back somewhat aggravated. It's like, what's wrong? It's like, well, I got to the point where I didn't have a desire. Then I soon quickly realized that in not having a desire unto itself a desire. And the teacher laughs at, now go live life. Because the paradox is, when you don't care whether you have a desire or not, you are desire free. That's the paradox. When you don't care,
it's like breathing.
when
Desire.
you don't concern yourself with money, money will be there. But it's not a game of open and closing your eyes. Because you open and close your eyes, you don't trust the system. And because you don't trust the system has to show you your non-trust. Because the system is impeccable in its system. If you believe something ain't going to happen, the system in its structure has to show you it ain't going to happen. That's the crux of it. Because it never, ever, ever fails. So if you fully trust that it will come, you don't need to look for it. If you know you have the money in your pocket, you don't have to do this and pull it out. It's already there. If you know you are already that, from this present moment, you'll have multitude of experiences, infinite ones of this moment of already being abundant. But abundance will look different because in the world we live in the universe, expansion is a constant. We have nothing to do with it. But if I feel lack, I'm going to have a constant of expansion of lack. If I feel and claim I'm abundant, I will have infinite amounts of expansion of abundance. And what does that mean? It doesn't mean I go from $1 million to $2 million. I might go to $1 million and then give it all away, but the joy of seeing people's lives change, that becomes a different abundance. We don't know. Again, we're brought onto this plane as actors, so to speak, in the understanding of the fractals, have I explained it. And if you just be present and listen to the director, you will win the Academy Award. But guess what? You don't really care. The actors that win it aren't looking to win it. The ones that are trying to win it, they become what we call B actors. And they'll become A actors when they stop trying. Because we're not here to try. We're here to just be. And in being, doesn't mean you sit on a stump and do nothing. But at times you will sit on the stump and do nothing. But then you get up and take a walk and do this. But there's this aura, there's this sense about you that we deem as confidence and steadfast. And in that, you can choose the persona and then deliver it to the world. And you want to deliver it to the world as an uplift. And the way you deliver it to the world is by saying, if I can do this, therefore you can. I am no different. I may know different, but I don't know better. And I only know what I know now. That's all I'll ever know. And when you sit down with that, because I sit with that a lot, and I get it, and then there's moments where I lose it. It's like, where did my AirPods go? There they are, you know? But even if I lose my AirPods, I could always go buy another pair so I don't panic. I'm not worried about losing that feeling of feeling exhilarated to going in, because
the contrast is needed.
It's needed. I can control the contrast, but the brilliant now, like if I lost something, I would freak out. But now I don't freak out because I know I could obtain it again. And then a lot of times in that field, it tends to show up. And if it doesn't, a greater set of whatever it is I need comes out on the market, and I get it.
In that field that Frank's describing, like to put it in a simple, plain way, is no resistance.
Very little resistance.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Very little.
But that's kind of the crux.
Yeah.
Is okay.
Yeah.
Knowing, you know, and then not allowing one way or the other an outcome to change how you feel about that situation.
Again, when the director is directing you and you're reading the lines, try not to anticipate which direction the movie's going, because you ought not to.
Because that's the subconscious mind assigning a meaning. Well, what if when you did that last time you didn't enjoy it?
Yeah, but now you're in a different role.
Yep.
So just go with it. You don't understand it, but that takes you off the hook of having to understand it. That's the most brilliant thing. This is why children, this is why we look to childhood and we glorify over it, because we weren't held responsible for having to know. Who assigned this to us because we're 50? We did. We bought into it. I don't have to know. Most brilliant thing is, like, Karen's like, where were you? I'm like, I have no idea. What are you doing tomorrow? I'm like, no idea.
That's a damn good point, man.
Yeah, and when someone says that, when you actually tell people this is what I'm doing, then they question you. So it becomes interrogation. But you ever watch like an investigator or a cop show? And, you know, they're sitting there. Where were you? I have no idea. There's nowhere for them to go. They have to stop the conversation. What's your name? I don't know. Oh, he's lost his memory. They stop questioning the person. But if you start telling them, then they're going to keep going. They're going to keep going. And they're going to drive you nuts. And they're going to put you into a corner. And you're going to be stuck to this persona. Next thing you know, you're doing 25 to life. And you don't know what the fuck you did.
Yeah,
you know, it's like, why am I here? Holy shit. They would talk to me. But if you just simply said, I don't know. There is nowhere to go. And you maintain your composure. And then you act accordingly. Because we don't know, but that's the beauty. The most brilliant thing about life is stepping into what we call the unknown. I don't want to keep stepping in. I don't want to keep watching the same movie.
And guys, it's uncomfortable stepping into the unknown.
Do you know somebody in your life that tells the same joke frequently?
Oh, we all do.
Yeah.
We all have that uncle.
Yeah, you almost laugh out of embarrassment. Now, the first time they probably told it, it was funny. But all of a sudden they keep saying it. It's like, but what makes a joke funny is its spontaneity. It's never been done before. That's why I was like, you know, I'm like, you always wonder, like, okay, what would it be like to be a stand-up comedian? I'm like, would I be able to go from and this is how much gratitude and high stand I have for comedians. They could step into a different show every day and tell the joke as if they never told it. But I'm like thinking from a narrow standpoint, because I'm trying to talk myself out of doing stand-up comedian because I have no business doing it. But, you know, it's like, yeah, I don't want to have to tell the same joke twice, you know. But then I'll say to myself, well, that's a narrow way of thinking it. Who says you have to say the same material over? Why can't you, every nightclub you go to, you do something different? Because life is spontaneous. Just like you and I do this right at this moment in time, we do it once a week. Mm-hmm. Have we ever talked about the same thing exactly? No. But it's in the same field of our understanding of life and experience. So you'll hear some overlay or some repetition, because the replication coming out from different angles is what anchors us into fully understanding it. But we've never said it
ever
like it. We never read the transcript from the previous one.
And it's funny because we can come in here. I know Frank does this. I do this as well. No expectation. Sit down at this mic, and it's literally rolling.
Yeah, I was.
No.
Yeah,
hey, what are we gonna talk about?
I learned by the 5th grade not to have expectations from my teacher, or she had no expectation of me, I should say. So,
it's funny.
Which it was brilliant because it took me off the hook of having to please anybody, and I found joy in it. I'm like, oh shit, they don't care if I get a C.
Speaking of that, that's something we all do too. We try to appease others so much. We get so wrapped up in this idea. But see that for what it is, guys. That's a projection. That's an insecurity within yourself. So when we talk about karma or something like that, we're not saying, oh, you did something bad, so something bad's going to happen to you. That's a very cut and dry plane of looking at it.
You created you created the punishment for the thing you did onto yourself. It wasn't out there.
Exactly.
So what is karma? It's like, karma is this. If you step on a crack on the sidewalk, you must slap yourself in the face. He's like, what? What? That's karma. You're the one creating the actual damage to your face by slapping it.
But you see what I mean? It's going to be that wheel that continues to put not the same experience in front of you, different versions of the same experience for you to see, oh, wow, this is a self-insecurity that I need to overcome,
but you can
I need to move
you can
through.
change. Because remember when the Beatles first came out? When the Beatles' first couple albums came out, we love you, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then they went from that to The Walrus. I'm like, what? Like, this is a different band. You see, so they actually shifted. They didn't continue with that poppy type of music. And not to say one was better than the other, but it shows you a band, and I think they were only together like 8 years, 9 years. They weren't, like, as a band, they weren't together, or 11 years or something. It wasn't that long of a period of time in which we look at how long bands have been together. But they changed the concept themselves throughout that short period of time. So they went in from like the earliest stuff, which is very poppy, or what we consider to be very poppy, to very introspective type of music, like I Am the Walrus. I'm like, what the fuck does that even mean?
Didn't Kiss put out a disco album once?
Yeah.
Look at that character change.
Actually, Kiss is rock disco.
Are they?
Come on.
Yeah, I guess I see what you mean.
But
Come on.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
But you know what I mean? It's just so funny because we can change
disco.
our perception at any point.
Yeah, and I just use the Beatles as, because you listen to their, I Love You, yeah. Then you listen to Sgt. Pepper, and I'm like, this the same band? Yeah, I can recognize the sound, the vocals and stuff like that, but the music was so different than I Love You, yeah, Money Can't Buy You Love, and then Sgt. Pepper, right? Wow. So if they can do it, we can do it. You don't have to sing I love you, yeah, 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 your whole life. And so I Love You, yeah, yeah, or Money Can't Buy Me Love, that's the same wheel. Yeah, it's different lyrics, different words, but it's still got the same chord structure, and it's got that think it like type of sound. But you can go from that to this, and back to that, and to this, and back to here, to that. You can do that. But we say, no, this is who I am. And your producer might say, don't step out of the guidelines. You don't want to do that. Why? Because they're short-sighted and think, well, this is where you made the money. You might lose your audience, and that would be tragic.
That's how the ego mind works.
Yeah, and we narrow the field. But we do come into this world naturally planting what we call limitations. But this is not a negative thing. We can place it. But if we weren't limited to 12 notes in music, how confusing would that be? Can you imagine there was an infinite amount of notes? Now, there's 12 notes, 24 octaves, but there's an infinite amount of music and songs I can play with that. So that limitation creates a field of infinite possibilities. But like, if there was
exactly what we're living in.
If there was infinite notes, I wouldn't know which structure chords to go to, and I couldn't even play a song. Just like if a football field was infinite in its size, what would the game even be?
How would we function if our eyes were able to see an infinite amount of light?
Yeah, so we come in here, we have an infinite amount, we have a finite amount of senses. We have the 5 plus the 1 of it.
But we need that to create and establish this...
The infinite perspectives.
Yep.
So we need a finite... It's almost like when you go to a restaurant, you don't want infinite choice like when you go to, what is that?
Cheesecake Factory.
Holy shit.
You get a binder.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, give me an hour, I'll be right back. And all of a sudden, the time you're like figuring out, you're famished and you're just like yelling at each other. But that's why I like to go to a restaurant.
In and out.
Yeah, I go to a restaurant, I'm like, give me 5 entrees, And And then when you really get sophisticated at going out to a restaurant, you walk in, and the waiter doesn't even hand you a menu. They'll say, "This is what we're serving." That's why we go, like, we're home cooked food, right? You go to somebody's house, you're like, "Hey, what's on the menu?" It's like, no.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we love home cooked. This is what you're eating.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, all right, this is interesting. So we actually start taking choice away. We start to expand. It's really interesting.
You want to know why? It's one less thing for our mind to race about.
Hell yeah. Yeah, like,
One more thing for this thing
Yeah.
that we allow to control conceptual,
And that's why we talked about
Ideas.
last time. We talked about infinite possibilities, and if you sit in the field of infinite possibilities, you're actually in a state of just bliss. But if you want to then get into the field of the duality in the physical world of doing, you must narrow it down into the field of what we call probability, which then narrows the field down of just a handful of choices. So, is it possible to have baklava? Yes. But you're in a Chinese restaurant. It's not probable. You know? See what I'm saying? But when I'm in a Chinese restaurant, now I'm in the probabilities of choosing a field of food that the Chinese may serve in that particular restaurant. And that satisfies the human existence. Because I don't want to, like, oh, wait a minute. Like a buffet to me, it aggravates me. Because you eat, especially when I was a kid. Now it doesn't. But when I was a kid, I eat something like, oh, shit, what happened? Oh, I didn't know they had that, and I wasted my belly on this. You know?
That's
and
what
now
we
you're
do
leaving pissed.
all in life.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's like,
gosh.
oh, my God. And, you know, and then, like, then you tell the parent, can we come back here tomorrow? Then you eat that French toast that you thought you didn't want, and then you realize, there's waffles? You know, and all of a sudden now you're pissed that you ate the French toast.
But that's the thing. We go buy our new car, right? And then we realize, it's not the car that I wanted. It's the house. So then you got the new car, you got the house, and then you see your neighbor up the street who's got a better house than you.
Yeah.
And he just bought a better car. Oh my God! Now I can't even enjoy my new house and car.
Yeah.
This is the wheel we run.
But
on,
then the
guys.
way you get around that is you get the hot wife.
Yeah.
and
And then the neighbor that moves in's
Yeah.
got a hotter wife.
Yeah, and then she cheats on neighbor, takes all your money, and there goes the car in the house, and like now you're back on the street.
Yep.
Yeah.
Guys, this is there's
So what's the lesson here?
Yeah.
Don't get married. No, it's
there's a better way.
just joking, Karen.
There's a better way.
There is a better way.
There's a better way.
Get married to Karen. That's a better way.
Knowing.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Well,
faith in knowing.
there is a more delightful way. But how do we know about the delightful way? Is because of the not so
Contrast.
delightful. The not so delightful way showed me the delightful way. So there is a level of failure, but then the level we're talking about, there's no such thing as failure. Did the 2-year-old child or 1-year-old child fail when they fell down? No. Can you imagine, you dummy? Get up.
Mm-hmm.
No, falling down. Realize, I gotta cue in my balance, and then all of a sudden they do it. So we never, at the level we're talking about, there is no such thing as failure. There's experiences that led you to understand the physical world in which we live in, right? But once I learned to walk, now what do I want to do? I want to walk on the curb. And then when I walk on the curb, what I want to do, I remember we used to, as kids at the playground, we had the chain link fence. It was like 4 foot high. We would see how far we can get on the chain link fence and walk along the chain link fence. And then for some people that was it. Then some people let's put a tightrope out. There's never ending. Then let's stretch the tightrope longer. Let's put it over the Grand Canyon for the love of God. Let's walk across the the Twin Towers or whatever it is. They no longer exist, but someone did that.
That was a cool movie.
Yeah. But you can still keep going that road, and it never ends with that narrowing a field. But it all started with the 1-year-old that fell.
I like how you just said never ends. So
Never ends.
But it's funny because often we say to ourselves, "Oh my God, is this ever gonna end? All the work, all the stress, all this," and it's not until you let go. You gotta let go. You gotta be okay with knowing, hey.
Yeah, when
This
you
never ends.
when you're looking in the direction of your preference, this is never gonna end. It's
Yeah.
a glorious thing. But when you look in the direction of your non-preference, like
It's never gonna end.
Yeah.
No, but that's true.
Yeah, it's like,
You
oh.
know, when you're in that grind, when you're matter meets matter, when you're on that third dimensional plane,
Yeah.
thinking suffering is the only way.
yeah,
You're oh, is this ever gonna end?
yeah.
And it's
This
such a
is
struggle.
this is why I'll never commit suicide, because something tells me I'll have to start over again, and I've gone too far, baby. Yeah, like Jesus.
Ground
Yeah,
zero.
you're like it's like I'll be like what's the Family Guy? You'd be like Stewie. You're like that toddler crawling around that you realize you know more than the adults here, but you gotta wait till you get older to freaking voice your opinion. You're an angry little bastard crawling around with a diaper on. It's like this is why I won't commit suicide. It's not worth it.
I love that.
The only one who will understand me is a dog.
Right. Oh man, that's
And it's all about the perspective shift.
it is.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us tonight,
All right,
guys.
you guys. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Right.